Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Rocket Monday, we're going to talk about rocket propellants. So let's dive right into it. Now, first thing you have to understand, the first thing you have to figure out is what is your aim exactly. Now, to simplify it this way, a rocket only works on one simple principle, that is action equals reaction. Basically, your engine is throwing mass away and reaction of that is your rocket going up. So as simple as that. So how do you get like how much energy you're going to get, or like how much speed or velocity you're going to get? To figure that out, you have to multiply two core factors. One is mass, basically how much you are throwing away, and B, how fast you are throwing away. So basically that's equates to your work done, basically how massive that is, your exhaust thing, and how fast you are throwing that away. Now, one thing you have to understand, ideally we would want something very heavy and we want to send throw it out of engine as fast as possible. Ideally, like, think of this way, iron running at an exhaust of like say 10% of light speed, that will give you a rocket that can go to like Mars and Jupiter. It's like, bro, just go to Mars and Jupiter. It's like ain't nobody got time for that. So but reality is we are limited by our engineering. That's the first thing you have to understand. Think of it this way, rocket equation did not change, but how the heck our rocket became so capable? We barely had V2 rocket which could barely do anything to going to Saturn V, which can go to moon. How the heck that happened? That was simply because of engineering. Chemistry did not change, the rocket equation did not change, but the engineering did. So engineering is your first limiting factor. So on paper, every Tom, Dick and Harry wants a nuclear rocket because it's gonna give like a ludicrously high specific impulse with ludicrously high thrust also. So it's not like, okay, ion engine very awesome for long trips but useless to get out of earth because it does not have enough thrust. That won't be an issue with a nuclear system. You can get a specific impulse as high as like 1200 seconds compared to like 300 to 400, and you can get enough thrust to take directly off the ground. Heck, you can do single stage to orbit. So limits of engineering is the first consideration that you must do. It's like, can my engineers actually build this? So on paper, every Tom, Dick and oh, we can make Sea Dragon. Here's the deal, can you actually make the damn thing? Reality is most of the time no. So that's the first limitation. Another aspect is, what is the need of your mission? And this is like very easily can be seen between weapons rockets and normal rockets, space payload, because by all metric, by all data points, liquid cryogenic fuel based systems are the most efficient one. Basically, your rocket can carry insane amount of payload, but no ICBMs are modern ICBMs are running on that. Why? Simply because military requirement is different. Military requirement is, I press a button, it go boom. They do not have the time, okay, fuel the rocket. And that's why, like, when you talk about missile silos, why the heck they were built? They were basically refueling stations, not refueling, fueling stations that was done underground. So, and they had to make it strong enough so it can withstand an attack and then strike back. So but modern ICBMs, either they are completely solid, in which case it's like ain't nobody got time for this, or sometimes they use non-cryogenic liquid propellant, which does give them a bit more advantage but does generally come with the consequence of being basically corrosive to the fuel tank. So they have to maintain it a bit more vigorously. So you have to understand that what is the limits of your engineering and what is the requirement of the mission. Only after these two considerations you figure out like which propellant you want to use. Now we're going to talk about oxygen, because this is the simplest option that you have to use if you want to make high efficiency rocket. Basically, if you are throwing anything other than basically nuclear warheads, this is the only option you're going to utilize, simply because we did try other things. Primary example being nitrous oxide. It does work. It's a room temperature liquid, so you do not need special consideration, and it does work. People have built hybrid rocket also, but it does not have enough efficiency to compete against liquid oxygen. And given the fact that we can directly extract liquid oxygen out of the atmosphere, people are like, yeah, just figure out how to handle liquid oxygen. Now, biggest hurdle with liquid oxygen is its temperature. The temperature is minus 218 degrees Celsius. To give you a context of that, most metal at that temperature will shatter like glass. This is idiotically cold. And in terms of density, what kind of density we are talking about? If you take 1 liter of it, it would be around 1.1 kilogram per liter. So it's kind of dense. Now, because of the low temperature or cryogenic temperature, it has a very small window of use. What does that mean? That simply means that is why military don't use it. It's like you fuel the rocket and you have to launch it, because it's gonna keep boiling off instantaneously. Like the moment you fuel the rocket, it's start gonna boiling off. You can vent it out, but like you have to realize like you still have you have to have a supply source to keep refueling it. And if your rocket remains on the pad for a few hours, you're gonna need a giant tank to keep replenishing it. That means basically how long your rocket can basically quote unquote stand on the pad. It's very little. It's not like, you know, your car fueled up ready to go. That's not happening. So that gives you very small window to use. And then there is another aspect of it, is that your tanks physically have to be built in such a way that it can handle the cryogenic temperature, and it is idiotically difficult because you right now we humans have like a very good understanding of metallurgy. So we have like 50,000 metal alloys. The moment you apply cryogenic temperature in that stack, it's like, okay, tell me which are good suited for like, you know, cryogenic temperature. It's like, okay, only these 5 alloys. It's like that's how brutal cryogenic temperature is to normal metal alloy. So flat out your basically tank becomes a headache to deal with. And but what do you get after going through all this trouble? You get the best way to burn any fuel. Now this is the interesting aspect. Burning simply means oxidization, and oxidation, there is nothing faster than oxygen itself. Now some people did try you know, ozone, but consequence of ozone is inherently unstable. So by the time you take your ozone from a fuel tank, somehow you have that basically your propellant tank to rocket, it would have directly down converted into oxygen. So inherently people did try that ozone, but ozone is inherently unstable, so that does not work. So flat out the best possible option under known engineering, under known science, under known doable things is the best option you have. Like liquid oxygen is so powerful, you can directly burn metal in it. So that's the amazing part of it, oxygen. So this is the first thing, but the temperature is low. Then we come to the granddaddy of rocket propellant, RP1. Now RP1 is must if you want high power. If you are building a rocket which is supposed to carry some serious payload to orbit, this is your first choice. Why? Like to give you the context of what kind of power, you're talking 5 million pounds of thrust from these puppies, Saturn V R1 engines, F1 engines, pardon me. Like there is nothing more powerful than this, flat out. As this point in you know, history, as in like 2021, there is nothing that comes close to this power. It's idiotically power. Like heck, Falcon 9 kerosene, flat out. Like if you want oomph, if you're like, dude, I need to get off this earth and I need to put enough mass in orbit to actually make me profit, this is your option. You're not going to think about it. And there are another benefit of this, that is it's room temperature liquid. What does that mean? Room temperature, when you say on earth, it translates to 15 psi of sea level pressure and around 25 degrees Celsius. So what does that mean? That basically means you can carry it in any bottle, glass, whatever you want to. It's a normal handling liquid, so that gives you a very good usable range. Basically inherently you can fuel this your rocket up and forget about it. It's like, yeah, oh, I'm gonna use it in like 9 months and all that jazz. You can easily do that. Density wise, now because of inherent nature of carbon and basically hydrocarbon that you are utilizing here, as in like in kerosene, pardon me about the background noise, the kerosene molecules could have varying kind of geometries. In those sort of scenario, your density could vary a lot. So your density would be going at the lowest point 0.8 1 kilogram per liter to 1.2 kilogram per liter. So it's kind of also dense. So in terms of mass you are throwing away, that's also very good. Now it's stable, easy to store, but it does come with a side effect that it produces soot. Now soot is not an issue if your rocket is use and throw, but it's a hell of a headache if your rocket is reusable. Now you might be like, how the heck is a reusable rocket? World's first reusable rocket is utilizing kerosene if that's the issue. One thing you have to understand, everything is like conceptual. It's like basically if smoking is dangerous to your health, but does not mean the moment you smoke you die. So that's the same thing. It's like this puppy does not have the reliability of a jet engine, basically, to give you a context of that. Like that's why right now when I'm making this video, SpaceX finally achieved 9th reuse of their booster. Now that's a big deal. Now here's the deal. Would you buy a car that can be only reused 9 times? That's the whole thing. And why this happening? Why the heck this shiny white rocket randomly becomes this black and sooty things? Simply because of the fuel they are burning. The fuel inherently has sooty because of some it creates a gunk, and that gunk is so sticky that it goes through the turbine and gets stuck to the turbine while turbine is rotating at full speed. So it's idiotically difficult to deal with. And if you are making a reusable engine, sooner or later you will be like, dude, I can't deal with this. And that's why Merlin does not use basically RP1. But it does have the advantage. If you are like low on budget and you still have to push heavy weight to low Earth orbit or even to moon, this is your guy. Now we come to hydrogen. Now hydrogen is the highest velocity rocket. Basically, if you want delta V, that's it. Like your payload is very small. Let's say a solar probe. Your payload puppy is that's tiny. That your delta V is tiny. But you have to go fast as possible. The only propellant choice you have is hydrogen. Why? Because hydrogen is light. What does that mean? That simply means, think of it this way. You have a temperature in your rocket engine that is T. Now you have this puppy. This is hot. Now if you throw a heavy material to it, let's say carbon dioxide, it will bounce off. Now the velocity that it will impart, it won't be very high because that is massive. The massive the thing is, the less velocity it will gonna get. But what happens if you throw a water vapor to it, H2O, it's gonna get much higher velocity. Inherently hydrogen gives you that ludicrously high velocity. So that's why many times people ask, okay, why the heck Atlas and Delta other rockets are still in use? Many times simply because they are utilizing hydrogen. What does that mean? That simply means if you are in a trajectory where you need as much delta V as possible, kerosene is gonna be left behind, especially in upper stage. In bottom stage there is no competition, but in upper stage there is a direct competition. And that's why, like, if you actually have to throw something very far out, as aka moon, the upper stages utilize liquid hydrogen. That is the primary reason for that. If you want high velocity, this is your guy. Now consequence of this puppy is ludicrously cold, as in minus 252 degrees Celsius cold. Now to give you a context of that, that's touching absolute zero. Basically absolute zero, liquid hydrogen, it's like almost touching it. It's idiotically cold. And in terms of density, it's ludicrously light. To give you a context, that is 70 grams per liter. Not even 100 grams, 70 grams per liter. It's very light. So you have to make huge tanks to carry few tons of it. It's like huge tanks. And because of the low temperature, it has the smallest window possible. And that's why you will notice that any rocket that is utilizing hydrogen, modern rockets, generally they have insulation. And anything that is utilizing liquid oxygen we can tolerate. Anything other than that, any higher temperature than like liquid methane, you do not need insulation. But hydrogen requires insulation. You have to have insulation, otherwise don't think about it. So that is like the opportunity of launch window is even smaller than that. So your replenishment circuit have to be much more powerful. You like to replenish the space shuttle while it's on the launch pad, you have to have like hundreds of tons of this fuel. Just keep going to there. So your tanks become idiotically difficult to build compared to liquid oxygen. That the fact that it's almost touching basically absolute zero makes even the metals that are cryogenically capable less capable. So fundamentally this is very difficult, but it does allow you to give highest specific impulse possible. So if you want the fastest velocity possible, this is your guy. Like if you want velocity, this is think of this way, like space shuttle literally had the same engine running on the sea level and the space. Like it literally was as close to single stage to orbit as we wanted. It's just like it needed solid booster to get that bit of oomph. So that's the whole point. That's why we use hydrogen if you need delta V. Now modern rockets are trying to switch to methane. Now the reason for that is simple. It's basically best compromise between RP1 and LH2. Basically liquid hydrogen is on one end, that is super fast. Kerosene on the other, complex hydrocarbon, but super stable, super powerful and all that jazz, because there are carbon dioxide, so like the oomph. What if you come into the hydrocarbon chain and one step below hydrogen, you get methane, CH4, simplest hydrocarbon. Now pardon me, the temperature wise it goes up to minus 162 degrees Celsius. Now it's cold now, but if you are handling liquid oxygen, this puppy will look easy. Like the amount of steel that can handle this thing is super easy, and that's why you can see Starlink does not need insulation on that. Minus 162 degrees Celsius is manageable. It's like we got this, we can handle that. And in terms of density, while it's not super dense as like RP1, it is dense enough where compared to hydrogen it looks like a heavyweight. It's almost 428 grams per liter, basically almost half kilogram per liter. So it is heavy. Now it also has the same issue of like small temperature, low temperature equals low opportunity of window, but it can be managed. If you are handling liquid oxygen, you can handle this. And because of the higher temperature, like it boil off is much slower than that, so replenishment circuit has to be relaxed. Now but it does give you the advantage of having a lot of thrust, lot of velocity without any soot. That means if you are building a Raptor engine on that, on paper at least, unless the engineering capsets creates any issue, your engines should be reusable upwards of 50 times rather than the limitation of 10 times, which Merlin can barely do. Let that be clear. Like it can barely do. It will be disintegrated to a point where they're like, dude, we are spending more money on refurbishing it rather than just like, just use a new engine. So that is why every new engine that is being developed right now, unless it's but done by a government organization who are running on 1970s technology, generally they are directly trying to make a methane engine. That is the primary reason. It has the good temperature window. Basically any metal that can handle liquid oxygen can handle this puppy. So it's not too big of an issue. It has good density. That means your turbo pump does not need to pump like, hundreds and 500, 600 liters per second in order to, like, you know, satisfy your engine. So that's also another benefit, and it gives you enough oomph so you can directly use that in basically ground stage without needing extra solid boosters and all that jazz. So it is the best compromise we have. And another aspect is, on paper, is that we should be able to build this puppy on Mars. Why? Because you need two things for this, carbon and hydrogen. Now, where do you gonna get your hydrogen? That's up to you. But for example, on ISS there is a methane production system. Like, why the heck ISS has methane production system? It does not. It's just like a waste management system. It's like they utilize water for electrolysis and they get the oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen in gaseous state, it's a boom mixture. You do not want boom mixture in a small space. So what they do, they take the hydrogen, but hydrogen is unstable. Like, it's inherently very low density. It will leak. And hydrogen has this ability to leak through almost anything, including solid metal. It will leak through it. So what they do is they take the carbon dioxide and they bond the carbon to methane, basically hydrogen, and make methane out of it, and then they vent the methane out of the airlocks. So we know on principle, and we have actual engineering data, that we can build methane in space. We do not know on Mars we will be able to do it or not, but on paper we can do that. If we have a water supply on Mars, super easy. Like, take it and go today, tomorrow, done. So that is why every Tom, Dick and Harry is focusing on methane. And because of the reality fact that you can reuse your engine without it covering up, you know, the turbine getting destroyed by the soot, or the whole rocket getting, you know, gunked up by the soot. Clean, efficient. And there is an interesting aspect of this: it is super cheap. Now you're like, how the heck this puppy can be cheap? Think of this way: it's generally found in gas wells. We generally carry this, like, whenever you talk about, like, you know, gas transporters, they utilize what we call LNG, that is liquefied natural gas, which is 99% this methane. When you're talking about CNG, that is used in transport industry, specifically in Delhi, that is methane. When you're talking about biogas, that is methane. So fundamentally, methane is super cheap to make, rather compared to RP1. RP1 is idiotically, it's a crude oil product, and it has to be refined to hell. So the refinement process adds up, cost per liter is ludicrously high. RP1 compared to jet fuel will start looking cheap, and jet fuel compared to your regular gas that you use in a car, jet fuel is like, bro, it's on a whole different level. There is a few zeros extra added. So think of this way. That's why, like, every Tom, Dick and Harry is going to methane. It's like, dude, it's cheaper. So this was my presentation on basically propellants. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike. Press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment, because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.